Yes, March 2nd, 1943, I was sworn in at Erie, Pennsylvania. Then we were put on a train in Titusville, Pennsylvania, and went to down there by Harrisburg, although I was in the 101st Airborne Parachute Infantry. I went over D plus a whole bunch because I went to so many different schools before I went overseas.
What was your specialty?
I was a demolitionist.
Where did you land in Europe?
Le Havre, France.
And then from there, where did you go?
Well, from there I went over. I was in Czechoslovakia for a while. We got on all of us replacements that went over went by truck almost every place that we went. And a six by six as they called them, and 12 men on a side on a bench in a 6x6 truck. And then we ended up in Berchtesgaden, Germany. We went through Landsberg, Germany. That's the only, I don't know if you'd call it a concentration camp or not, but they burned up a whole bunch of Jews in that town just before we got into it. Well, I couldn't believe it. You could see the burnt buildings. There was about 3 buildings there that were like about like a U.S. Army barracks, and they had locked these Jews inside, all these Jewish people, men, women, and children, and soaked it with gasoline or kerosene, and then set fire to it. And when we arrived in town in these trucks, you could see hands sticking out, where they tried to claw their way out by hand. And Colonel Sink was our commanding officer, and he ordered every man, woman, and child that was able to get a shovel and start digging a hole. We're going to give these people a decent burial. And I'll never forget the one little kid. He was about 15 or 16, a German kid. He said, "Heil Hitler," like that. A first lieutenant just kicked his little hind end right down into where they were burying all these Jews in a mass grave, and says, "One more outfit like that and we're going to start covering you up. One more outburst like that, we're going to start covering you up." And that kid he was trained to do that. Right. He didn't know any different.
Did you get a sense that they knew what was going on?
Well, yes, I do. I think most of them knew because, they lived right there, and they could almost see what was going on. They knew they were locked in there. It was toward the end of the war, and of course the Germans were in disarray at the time. And I do remember when I went on patrol one time, and me and there was just one other guy, and we saw a whole bunch of people coming down the road toward us, and I said, "Oh, gee, these guys look like Germans." And we got over to the side, and he was on one side of the road, I was on the other side, only 2 American soldiers, and there was about 300 Germans. They all gave up. They were tired and hungry and didn't want the war. A lot of them were young kids, and a lot of them were old men. So we said, "Okay, werfen Sie deine Waffen, throw your weapons down," and they did. They still had their weapons when we came up to them. They threw their weapons down, and they didn't stack rifles or nothing. Just threw them in the mud or anywhere. And when we marched them in, that was probably the biggest group that our company took into Zelmsee, Austria. Right. And that's where I was assigned. I might as well tell you about that. There was myself and another guy were assigned. We didn't know where we were going or anything, but there was a first lieutenant and a jeep driver, and if I can recall, I'm pretty sure I was on the left side. I was called the left cannoneer. There was 30 caliber machine guns mounted on the back of the jeep on the left and the right. I was the left cannoneer, and the other guy was the right cannoneer, and we went for a ride between Zelmsee and Innsbruck, out in the country, and that's where I guess they knew where they were going. Myself and the other cannoneer didn't know anything. We were just told that if we run into any opposition, that we were we had the ammo and everything there to take care of it. And when we got there, it was just a huge house, maybe a 30 or 40 room house, but I guess it was Hermann Göring's place of living. It was a castle, a small castle. And when the first lieutenant got out of the Jeep, there was no German soldiers there, no resistance. That's what surprised me. When the first lieutenant got out and went up, knocked on the door, Frau Göring came to the door, and he says, "Is Hermann here?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "Bring in the mouse." Out come Hermann Göring. He's a big, tall, heavy guy, probably weighed 300 pounds. You could tell by the pictures. I never saw this many pictures of him before. And he came to the door in full dress uniform. And the first lieutenant put me and the other guy, who was the right cannoneer, on the door.
You were there at the arrest of Hermann Göring.
Yeah. We brought him in. I mean, brought him out to the Jeep, and we both had M1 rifles when we went up, when the first lieutenant knocked at the door. And I got on one side of him, the other guy got on the other side, and we just brought him out, and he sat in the front, and the first lieutenant sat in the back, I think, in case, you don't know what a war criminal like that might do, I suppose. So he was sitting back there, kind of watching him, and the other guy was driving the Jeep, and the other two of us was standing guard till we were relieved. And that's the last I saw of Göring. They took him back to 506th Infantry Regiment, headquarters and headquarters. That's the company we were in. Oh, I was probably there less than 4 hours, just one turn of guard duty, that's all.
And so Frau Göring and Emma, that's his daughter,
Yeah.
they stayed there.
That's when, by the time I left, they were still there. I thought he was about as big as any man I ever saw, because he was, well, the average World War II guy was around 5'8". I was a little bit shorter than that. But Hermann Göring, I don't know how much he weighed, but I think he must have weighed 300 pounds. After they left his place of residence, we were stationed as guards there, me and this other guy. And I don't know, I think according to my son-in-law there, I think Göring officially surrendered to I forget the name of the infantry outfit. Some colonel or general accepted his official surrender.
Right.
I never knew what happened to him.
So he went to ZLMZ in a camp, treated like a war hero, or not war hero, but a head of state.
Yeah, sure, second in command.
Handed the baton and the whole acceptance. And then they had a news conference, and he was all decked out in all of his military splendor.
Oh yeah.
And of course, they had to have an interpreter. Well, Fred Friedman, down in Bradford, Pennsylvania, who speak German very well, just happened to be there.
Was he in the 101st Airborne too?
Yeah.
Because that's where we were stationed. Our company was stationed right in ZLMZ.
And so as part of that, he was there, and so he became one of the translators during that first news conference of Hermann Göring by the press corps.
I was trained as an interpreter, and then I was activated as those Army universities. Most American universities were Army operated during the war. For the interview Life magazine did of Hermann Göring for the generals of the Army, that was pretty interesting. That was featured on the front of Life magazine and in the Bradford papers.
Well, set that up a little bit. Now, he sort of turned himself in, didn't he?
Well, he was captured. I don't know that he turned himself in or...
Okay. But they sort of originally treated him like a visiting...
No, VIP.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was in his powder blue uniform of the Air Force when saw him, and was asked why Germany didn't proceed to try and capture England when France fell, rather than wait over the winter. And he said, well, he was in favor of that, and some of the German military were, but Hitler wanted to wait until the winter was over, which was fatal to their cause, because England survived that and bombed Europe pretty good that winter. I do remember that, and I think he was subdued at this point.
If you closed your eyes now, could you describe him, what he looked like?
Portly, very heavy man, fat. It was a informal interview there,
Press corps?
and they were there in mass, as you could imagine, and interpreters and diplomats. The main interviewing of Göring was not done by me. It was done by, I would say, more significant interpreters. I was an Army-trained interpreter, but not the most expert of the interpreters they had after the war.